Dear beautiful people, let's talk revolution, shall we? Revolution. What a concept. A concept with which there's so much association of desire, wishes, fear. For those who are attached to an established system, the idea of the breaking down of the structure that they are used to creates great fear. And those are often the spokesmen of conservatism, that means resisting change in society. When Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital in German, his diagnosis of the state of society at the time was, in its essence, correct. But what Karl Marx did not know, or could not know, was that no revolution can ever be successful without a drastic shift in consciousness within society. All suffering comes from a sense of separateness. All suffering comes from identification with limitation. So if I believe to be this body, if I believe that I will live maybe 70 or 80 years, and that it's all about surviving, and that it's all about squeezing as much experience and pleasure into those 70 or 80 years and avoid as much pain as possible, then I am in the hamster wheel of suffering. But when I understand that this body is just a temporary expression of who I am, and I had many bodies, then I know there is no end to experience, so there's no anxiety about that. Now, with that understanding, I realize what is true for me is true for everyone else. They are consciousness, or better, they are awareness, unchanging, always there. It's just the circumstances change. The appearances change. The manifestations change, but the awareness, the I am that is always present, never does change. This I am is me, but also you. And we have actually shared consciousness. But through the experience of physical body, we're under the impression that this is not the case. So then, a theory like communism, even though the diagnosis of a small percentage of society taking advantage of a great percentage of society was correct, could never work. It could never work because it wasn't a materialistic ideology. A materialistic ideology can never lead to a successful revolution because it does not include shifts in consciousness. And it does not include that those shifts in consciousness happen within awareness that is unchanging. That means those who then try to get rid of the current structure, try to change the current system, did so violently. And since they felt like victim to a system, they took revenge. Everything we create, we give it an energy. If the new system I create it with violence, and its foundation is violence. Martin Luther King understood that. Gandhi understood that. They knew any global transformation or local transformation can only happen on the basis of spiritual realization and peaceful action. Action that leads to oneness and not to separation. So while those who are poor right now, or the masses who are at a great resource disadvantage compared to the very few who have gathered all the wealth on earth for themselves, if those people make change with victimhood in mind, they will become perpetrators. Perpetrators create new victims, and the cycle of karma never ceases. Only through forgiveness we can break through. The one you know as Jesus, Master Yeshua, knew this. He knew that forgiveness is the way out of the cycle of karma. Forgiveness is the way to realizing oneness. But all those revolutionary systems, they're focused on resources, structures, but not on forgiveness, not on love, not on becoming one with the one who seemed to be in the position of perpetrator also. Changes without forgiveness do not lead to a stable society. They lead to a society with perpetual violence where just the dictator changes. That's why the application of socialism and communism had to fail, because people were still in their essence selfish. They wanted revenge, they wanted power, because before they felt powerless and they felt to be victims. The same mechanism, you could see that after World War II, when the Jewish population was victimized by fascism, that now they, in that sense, make the Palestinians victims because they're still carrying the victim energy and therefore becoming the perpetrator. If I believe to be a victim, I cannot forgive, and the circle of karma cannot be broken. So when we talk revolution, which makes everyone very, very nervous, you see, makes politicians nervous especially. Well, if you're nervous about revolution, what are you hiding? What are you hiding that you're afraid of change? Right? What do you not want to surface? Or people to know about? People are being manipulated into not creating a revolution by saying this will lead to anarchy, by saying this will lead to chaos. This is the argument of those in power who would like the status quo to stay intact. And the only way they can keep you in check is by arguing from fear. And when you are selfish, when you are selfish, you will listen to fear. What a realization. If I want to save this body, I'm going to be selfish, right? Not going to care about the body of my neighbor, or even of the body of the politician that I may be perceived as a perpetrator. Or maybe he's just a middle person, he's just bored, you see. Fear makes people selfish. No matter what part of society they're from. I want to make this very clear. Alright? So in order to keep you selfish, to keep you in a state of self-preservation, because people who are in a state of self-preservation, they don't do revolutions, you see. But what type of revolution can we do right now? Well, the current situation is very interesting. Very interesting. It offers catalysts to go in many directions. There is a great chance for a shift in humanity to a more compassionate, more conscious, more enlightened culture. There's also the potential to fall into selfishness and fear again, and therefore letting those powers stay in place. Oh, they keep me safe, your ego says. Oh, they keep me safe. Wonderful. They protect me from a virus. All right. But what I'm seeing right now is the beginning of a police state. I'm seeing how politicians debate using drones to see if citizens leave their house. Because they could be infectious. We can't have that. We can't have them threaten the elderly, those evil beings who seek freedom and sunlight and fresh air. Insane are they, aren't they? The German Constitution is a powerful constitution. And the Germans, after World War II, had a certain awareness of what it means to live under a dictatorship and how to prevent it. Now the German constitution is under threat, the same way the US constitution is under threat, and the same way many constitutions are currently under threat. Because the coronavirus situation is being used, an app used by the powers in place to gain more and more control over the citizens. By arguing from fear, by making you act from self-preservation, that means selfishness, by telling you you need to be afraid of a virus, which dangers are greatly over-exaggerated. This is not the Black Death. This is not the Spanish flu. This is a more or less dangerous flu. If I would ask you, should we burn our constitutions, our democracy, because of a flu, you would tell me I'm insane, but this is what we're doing right now. So let's talk revolution. Revolution means to choose freedom, non-violently. And your freedom is not separate from someone else's freedom. If others are not free, you're not free either, because we all live on the same planet. Everybody needs to be free. And the only limit to freedom is violence. Violence limits freedom. Violence is not the way. But what is the way is not to be obedient, is to question, is to create content online, to have the difficult conversations with the people you care about. What it means to take the resources away from the citizenry, to kill self-employed businesses, to weaken the population, to make them even more dependent on a centralized government, to potentially force vaccinate a large population. A society in which I am not allowed to choose what I put or don't put into my body is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship. Germans have a very powerful sentence. It's called Wehret den Anfängen. That means resist the beginnings. We had a hard lesson to learn after World War II. How we did not respond to the growing regime. How we ignored it. How we stayed complacent at home because we wanted to be safe. We were selfish. And now a selfish society is obedient and sits at home on their ass and say that my selfishness is being a good person. I'm protecting the elderly. I'm not threatening anyone, you see. I'm submitting to the dominant paradigm because I don't want to be labeled a bad person. I don't want to be nailed to the cross. You see, this is what perversion actually means. The Christian church has told you perversion is when you get kinky, right? When you enjoy your sex life, that's perverted, right? Funny. Master Yeshua would have never said something like that. How can I control people by making them feel guilty and afraid? Because fear and guilt go hand in hand. The teachings have been perverted. The constitutions are being perverted. And we are sitting at home idle while the power grab happens. In Germany, a female lawyer said that the corona shutdown went too far. And she tried to sue the government A day later, she found herself in the psychiatry. They let her out a day later. But still, it's about intimidation, isn't it? It's about instilling that selfishness, that sense of self-preservation, so people refuse to act. Does that instill anger in you? It doesn't me. But I'm aware of that anger. I can feel that anger. And since I am allowing that anger, I'm conscious of it. And I can choose to love and to forgive still. I can choose to break the cycle of perpetration. The cycle of victimhood. But it is about time to consciously choose a different world. An ecological world. A world with a just economy system. Where the basics are covered, where every human being has the right to health insurance. Has the right to basic needs fulfilled. So the creative potential of humanity can be free. And if you call that communism, and if you call that socialism, which is very popular to call that in the US, right? To prevent it from happening. Because it would take the power away from the elite, you see. So if that would be happening, then the people who have their needs fulfilled need to also have a higher state of consciousness so they don't stay selfish. Because what sabotages oneness is a parasitic, predatorial attitude which comes out of self-preservation and focus on physical survival only. This is fear-based, therefore control-based. This is why communism did not work. Because the change of the system makes no difference when there is no change in consciousness. People say money is the root of evil. Let's get rid of money. It has nothing to do with money. Money is just a way of distributing energy. It is perfectly neutral. But with what state of consciousness are we using money? With what state of consciousness are we building systems? With freedom, with love, with sustainability in mind, with interconnectivity realized? With understanding that the rivers on this planet are the veins through which the life force flows? That the trees are our lungs? That my neighbor next door, who has some sort of training that I don't have, and some sort of knowledge, is my right hand and I'm his left hand. We are one organism, one consciousness, and the selfish sense of separation has caused the fail of every revolution humans have ever undertaken. Because those were not revolutions from wisdom and love. Those were revolutions of revenge, of power, thirstiness of those who felt disempowered. But so they fell into the same trap as those overlords that were sitting in place there before. The constitutions that we have created came from more enlightened people. In the US, the Declaration of Independence, the formulation of the Constitution was tremendously powerful. Undermined later by the banking elite and by the financial cartels. The German Constitution is tremendously powerful. Some Germans are going on the streets now. It's not a mainstream television, of course. Going on the streets, they are resisting the curfew. They're saying, in my constitution, I have a right to meet with other people, with like-minded people. I have a right to protest. How can I protest if I'm not allowed to leave my home? How can I keep powers in check if I'm not allowed to exercise rights within democracy. How are our rights taken away? Again, politicians speak to your selfishness, to your fear of survival. And they say, we protect you. Okay, all right. You say you protect me? Here's the key to my house. Here are the keys to where my children sleep. Be aware what it means. Freedom means freedom for everyone. Your freedom is not greater than the freedom of someone else. But if you do not exercise freedom, out of self-preservation, you will be free no more. And you will not be safe. So how to respond to this right now? By understanding what is important. Self-preservation is not the main priority. Malcolm X used to say, if you're not willing to die for your freedom, delete it from your vocabulary. Peaceful revolutions are possible. Gandhi showed it. Martin Luther King showed it. That we can create a society based on love and compassion. Based on democracy. Based on empathy. Based on oneness instead of separation. Self-preservation and fear separates. Now it is time to question the structures in place. It's not only time to question the structures, but very, very importantly, to be aware that those structures are not outside of you. They have been conditioned into your brain since you were little children. If you would honestly reflect how many genuine free choices you made since being a kid, you would be shocked how few they are. To understand manipulation, you need to understand psychology. You need to understand neurology. You need to understand energy. And you need to understand that if I raise a child by saying we live in a capitalism and you gotta compete, otherwise you're not gonna make it. So you're not going to cooperate, you gotta compete. This is the mindset I make you grow up with. And they say, if you're not stronger or tougher than the others, they'll eat you alive. So now I have created a fearful, selfish being. Alright? And the moment some sort of crisis happens, which is up to interpretation, by the way, what a crisis is or not in this moment. So when some sort of crisis happens, this fear trigger in you is activated through media, through a certain type of vocabulary. And it's just enough to trigger your self-preservation. It is so, sometimes even funny, in a strange way. People buying all the toilet paper. I could go all Freudian about that. Could go all psychoanalysis about that one. What's the first thing you learn to control is to shit. Suddenly you have a feeling you lose control, you're endangered by a virus, and now suddenly compulsively you buy all the toilet paper. Oh, that's a good one. Not be afraid to be angry. But don't hurt anyone. Transform that anger into love and compassion. And speak to people from wisdom. And obedience is not being a good person. Master Yeshua wasn't obedient. That's why he was nailed to a cross. And they tell you he died for your sins. Utter bullshit. He was demonstrating that he was more than his body and that he would die for his freedom. He showed he had no fear. So they tell you freedom is perversion. Spirituality is perversion. When you express yourself sexually in a free way, no matter what you like, as long as you don't hurt anyone, and it's consensual, right? But when you express yourself in a free way, they tell you it's perverted. Because it's the expression of freedom. You're not allowed to express yourself freely. You're being told to feel guilty, that you're an incomplete being. You need to add something to yourself. Success, good looks. You need to add something to yourself. Right now is never enough. So they tell you need stuff. You need makeup. You need an expensive car. You need all those things you've become addicted to because they tell you that you're little. They don't tell you that you're the ground of existence. They don't tell you that you've always been there, that you will always be there. And they also don't tell you that you come back to a world that you have left behind with the energy that you put out into this world. And if this energy was one of fear, of selfishness, this is the world you come back to. And your children. People say, I can't be disobedient. I got children to take care of. Well, if you don't take care of what's happening right now, your children will grow up in a world that is Orwellian, that is Brave New World. Or isn't it already? Someone is depressed, feels life is meaningless. What do? We say, you have a chemical imbalance. Let's give you a substance to cure that chemical imbalance. It's not a chemical imbalance, it's a lack of meaning. Why it's a lack of meaning? Because soul expression is not allowed in a controlled society full of selfish, fearful people. The virus that people are not speaking of here is fear. This is the true virus that needs to be addressed. And fear is a result out of selfishness. No selfishness, no fear. Shockingly simple. Transform yourselves so the world is transformed. Go beyond fear. Find love. Find compassion within yourself in the present moment, which is eternity. Every mystic has told you that. Every Zen monk, every Buddha, every yogi, every Gnostic has told you that. The present moment is eternity. Find out that if you are now, you're forever. That the body is a phenomenon of time. That the brain is a phenomenon of time. That the personality is a phenomenon of time. But the awareness that is witnessing a body, witnessing a brain, witnessing a personality is now and is forever. And this awareness does not need to be afraid of a single thing. And does not know selfishness. But has compassion and love for all things. Find that within you. And then we will create a new earth. Where there is an end to violence and power. Where there is a beginning of creativity, of freedom, of love, of soul expression. Without having to limit another being. Without seeing another being as separate from yourself. This is the way, and it has been the way for thousands of years. Always distorted, always manipulated, always perverted by those who were fearful of the way. The way is oneness, not separation. The fear is love. The way is love, not fear. The way is compassion, not pity. Contemplate about that, my friends. Beware.